Hi everyone, I'm going to try a new segment. Hopefully you guys can see me, see what I'm doing. I'm going to do like a segment, like a Reading Rainbows segment for people who can't get access to books, because a lot of people, they're online, they're like, oh, I'm reading all these books, and a lot of them are like fluff, like Twilight and none of that stuff, you know. You ask people to read law books or, nonfiction that has to do with reality to empower people, and they think you're weird. So I'm going to try to maybe go through some books on my channel, like do like maybe 10 pages at a time for each video, and that way people can see the deception going on, because this is a fabulous book. It's called Doublespeak. For each segment, I'm not going to make a long rant at first. I'll keep it streamlined. But it's from William Lutz. I have many books. I have a mini library. I keep the ones that are very valuable with information, and there's a lot of them I resell from my college days and whatnot. But not enough people know about this book. There's a Twilight Zone episode called Wordplay, and if you watch the 1984 George Orwellian movie and the novel of the same name, you will find a lot of these concepts. This actually should be required reading for every homeschooler. Public schools, they don't want you to know anything. I encourage everyone to homeschool. They don't want you guys to know the truth. I have a book that breaks down even that. It's a very thick book, and if I have to, I can do it in segments, because it's this is our version of Reading Rainbow, and I like playing show and prove, because I'm showing and I'm proving what's going on in society, like many others. So this book is entitled Doublespeak: From Revenue Enhancement to Terminal Living. How government, business, advertisers, and others use language to deceive you, which they do. I'm trying to get the light on this. It's not easy, but I want you guys to see the pages as I go. So we're going to start, and I'll do it, it'll be like an audio book. You can fast forward till I start reading. If you don't want to hear my rant, that's fine. I'll try to make this like really streamlined. This is new. It's kind of like, it's like a free audio library, These are books that I accumulate, and they cost me a pretty penny because I found it to be very valuable. And I know people are so fickle and stiff-necked that unless you make it really easy for them, they don't want to know the truth, It's like the only pill people don't want to swallow is the truth. So I will see how this goes. I hope that you guys enjoy it. Chapter 1: Involuntary Conversions, Preemptive Counterattacks, and Incomplete Successes. The World of Doublespeak. There are no potholes in the streets of Tucson, Arizona, just pavement deficiencies. The Reagan administration didn't propose any new taxes, just revenue enhancement through users' fees. Those aren't bums on the street, just non-goal-oriented members of society. There are no more poor people, just fiscal underachievers. There was no robbery of an automatic teller machine, just an unauthorized withdrawal. The patient didn't die because of medical malpractice. It was just a diagnostic misadventure of a high magnitude. The U.S. Army doesn't kill the enemy anymore. It just services the target. And the doublespeak goes on. Doublespeak is language that pretends to communicate but really doesn't. It is language that makes the bad seem good, the negative appear positive, the unpleasant appear attractive, or at least tolerable. Doublespeak is language that avoids or shifts responsibility, language that is at variance with its real or purported meaning. It is language that conceals or prevents thought rather than extending thought. Doublespeak limits it. Doublespeak is not a matter of subjects and verbs agreeing. It is a matter of words and facts agreeing. Basic to doublespeak is incongruity. The incongruity between what is said or left unsaid and what really is. It is the incongruity between what is said or left unsaid and what really is. It is the incongruity between the word and the referent, between seem and be, between the essential function language, communication, and what doublespeak does: mislead, distort, deceive, inflate, circumvent, obfuscate. Sorry, guys. How to spot doublespeak. Can you see this? How can you spot doublespeak? Most of the time, you will recognize doublespeak when you see or hear it. But if you have any doubts, you can identify doublespeak just by answering these questions. Who is saying what to whom? Under what conditions and circumstances? And with what intent? And with what results? Answering these questions will help you identify as doublespeak language that appears to be legitimate or that at first glance doesn't even appear to be doublespeak. First kind of doublespeak. There are at least 4 kinds of doublespeak. The first is the euphemism, an inoffensive or positive word or phrase used to avoid a harsh, unpleasant, or distasteful reality. But a euphemism can also be a tactful word or phrase which avoids directly mentioning a painful reality. Or it can be an expression used out of concern for the feelings of someone else, or to avoid directly discussing a topic subject to a social or cultural taboo. When you use a euphemism because of your sensitivity for someone's feelings or out of concern for a recognized social or cultural taboo, it is not doublespeak. For example, you express your condolences that someone has passed away because you do not want to say to a grieving person, "I'm sorry your father is dead." When you use the euphemism "passed away," no one is misled. Moreover, the euphemism functions here not just to protect the feelings of another person, but to communicate also your concern for that person's feelings during a period of mourning. When you excuse yourself to go to the restroom, or you mention that someone is sleeping with or involved with someone else, you do not mislead anyone about your meaning, but you do respect the social taboos about discussing bodily functions and sex in direct terms. You also indicate your sensitivity to the feelings of your audience. However, when a euphemism is used to mislead or deceive, it becomes doublespeak. For example, in 1984, the U.S. Department announced that it would no longer use the word killing in its annual report on the status of human rights in countries around the world. Instead, it would use the phrase unlawful or arbitrary deprivation of life, which the department claimed was more accurate. Its real purpose for using this phrase was simply to avoid discussing the embarrassing situation of government-sanctioned killings in countries that are supported by the United States and have been certified by the United States as respecting the human rights of their citizens. The use of a euphemism constitutes doublespeak, since it is designed to mislead, to cover up the unpleasant. Its real intent is at variance with its apparent intent. Its language designed to alter our perception of reality. The Pentagon, too, avoids discussing unpleasant realities when it refers to bombs and artillery shells that fall on civilian targets as incontinent ordnance. And in 1977, the Pentagon tried to slip funding for the neutron bomb unnoticed into an appropriations bill by calling it a radiation enhancement device. Second kind of doublespeak. A second kind of doublespeak is jargon, the specialized language of a trade, profession, or similar group, such as that used by doctors, lawyers, engineers, educators, or car mechanics. Jargon can serve an important and useful function within a group. Jargon functions as a kind of verbal shorthand that allows members of the group to communicate with each other clearly, efficiently, and quickly. Indeed, it is a mark of membership in the group to be able to use and understand the group's jargon. But jargon, like the euphemism, can also be doublespeak. It can be and often is pretentious, obscure, and esoteric terminology used to give an air of profundity, authority, and prestige to speakers and their subject matter. Jargon as doublespeak often makes the simple appear complex, the ordinary profound, the obvious insightful. In this sense, it is used not to express, but impress. With such doublespeak, the act of smelling something becomes organoleptic analysis. Glass becomes fused silicate. A crack in a metal support beam becomes a discontinuity. Conservative economic policies become distributionally conservative notions. Lawyers, for example, speak of an involuntary conversion of property when discussing the loss of or destruction of property through theft, accident, or condemnation. If your house burns down or if your car is stolen, you have suffered an involuntary conversion of your property. When used by lawyers in a legal situation, such jargon is a legitimate use of language since lawyers can be expected to understand the term. However, when a member of a specialized group uses its jargon to communicate with a person outside the group and uses it knowing that the non-member does not understand such language, then there is doublespeak. For example, on May 9th, 1978, a National Airlines 727 airplane crashed while attempting to land at the Pensacola, Florida airport. 3 of the 52 passengers aboard the airplane were killed. As a result of that crash, National made an after-tax insurance benefit of $1.7 million, or an extra 18 cents a share dividend for its stockholders. Now, National Airlines had 2 problems. It did not want to talk about one of its airplanes crashing, and it had to account for the $1.7 million when it issued its annual report to its stockholders. National solved the problem by inserting a footnote in its annual report, which explained that the $1.7 million income was due to the involuntary conversion of a 727. National thus acknowledged the crash
of its airplane and the subsequent profit it made from the crash, without once mentioning the accident or the deaths. However, because airline officials knew that most stockholders in the company, and indeed most of the general public, were not familiar with legal jargon, the use of such jargon constituted doublespeak. Third kind of doublespeak. A third kind of doublespeak is gobbledygook, or bureaucraties. Basically, such doublespeak is simply a matter of piling on words, of overwhelming the audience with words. The bigger the words and the longer the sentences, the better. Alan Greenspan, then chair of President Nixon's Council of Economic Advisors, was quoted in the Philadelphia Inquirer in 1974 as having testified before a Senate committee that it is a tricky problem to find the particular calibration and timing that would be appropriate to stem the acceleration in risk premiums created by falling incomes without prematurely aborting the decline in the inflation-generated risk premiums. Nor has Mr. Greenspan's language changed since then. Speaking to the meeting of the Economic Club of New York in 1988, Mr. Greenspan, now Federal Reserve Chair, said, "I guess I should warn you, if I turn out to be particularly clear, you've probably misunderstood what I've said." Mr. Greenspan's doublespeak doesn't seem to have held back his career. Sometimes gobbledygook may sound impressive, but when the quote is later examined in print, it doesn't even make sense. During the 1988 presidential campaign, Vice Presidential candidate Senator Dan Quayle explained the need for a strategic defense initiative by saying, "Why wouldn't an enhanced deterrent, a more stable peace, a better prospect to denying the ones who enter conflict in the first place, to have a reduction of offensive systems and an introduction to defense capability?" I believe this is the route the country will eventually go. The investigation into the Challenger disaster in 1986 revealed the doublespeak of gobbledygook and bureaucraties used by too many involved in the shuttle program. When Jesse Moore, NASA's associate administrator, was asked if the performance of the shuttle program had improved with each launch or if it had remained the same, he answered, "I think our performance in terms of the liftoff performance and in terms of the orbital performance, we knew more about the envelope we were operating under, and we have been pretty accurately staying in that. And so I would say the performance has not been drastically improved, has not by design drastically improved, I think we have been able to characterize the performance more as a function of our launch experience as opposed to it improving as a function of time. While this language may appear to be jargon, a close look will reveal that it is really just gobbledygook laced with jargon. But you really have to wonder if Mr. Moore had any idea what he was saying. Fourth kind of doublespeak. The fourth kind of doublespeak is inflated language that is designed to make the ordinary seem extraordinary, to make everyday things seem impressive, to give an air of importance to people, situations, or things that would not normally be considered important, to make the simple seem complex. Often this kind of doublespeak isn't hard to spot. It's pretty funny. It's usually pretty funny. While car mechanics may be called automotive internists, elevator operators, members of the Vertical Transportation Corps, used cars pre-owned or experienced cars, and black and white television sets described as having non-multicolor capability, you really aren't misled all that much by such language. However, you may have trouble figuring out that when Chrysler initiates a career alternative enhancement program, it is really laying off 5,000 workers, or that negative patient care outcome means that the patient died, or that rapid oxidation means a fire in a nuclear power plant. The doublespeak of inflated language can have serious consequences. In Pentagon doublespeak, preemptive counterattack means that the American forces attacked first, engaged the enemy on all sides, means American troops were ambushed. Backloading of augmentation personnel means a retreat by American troops. In the doublespeak of the military, the 1983 invasion of Grenada was conducted not by the U.S. Army, Navy, Air Force, and Marines, but by the Caribbean peacekeeping forces. But then, according to the Pentagon, it wasn't an invasion, it was a pre-dawn vertical insurgent. Doublespeak throughout history. Doublespeak is not a new use of language, particular to the politics or economics of the 20th century. In the 5th century BC, the Greek historian Thucydides wrote in the Peloponnesian War that revolution thus ran its course from city to city. Words had to change their ordinary meanings and to take those which were now given them. Reckless audacity came to be considered the courage of a loyal ally. Prudent hesitation, spacious cowardice. Moderation was held to be a cloak for unmanliness. Ability to see all sides of a question, inaptness to act on any. Frantic violence became the attribute of manliness. Cautious plotting, a justifiable means of self-defense. The advocate of extreme measures was always trustworthy, his opponent a man to be suspected. Julius Caesar, in his account of the Gallic Wars, described his brutal and bloody conquest and subjugation of Gaul as pacifying Gaul. Where they make a desert, they call it peace, said an English nobleman, quoted by the Roman historian Tacitus. When traitors were put to death in Rome, the announcement of their execution was made in the form of saying, "They have lived." Taken notice of a man in the ancestral manner meant capital punishment. The prisoner was then led away, meant to be executed. Meant he was executed. Imagine that. Page number 8. In his memoirs, V2, Walter Dornberger, commanding officer of the Peenemünde Rocket Research Institute in Germany during World War II, describes how he and his staff used language to get what they needed from the Bureau of Budget for their rocket experiments. A pencil sharpener was an appliance for milling wooden dowels up to 10 millimeters in diameter, and a typewriter was an instrument for recording test data with rotating roller. But it was the Nazis who were the masters of doublespeak, and they used it not just to achieve and maintain power, but to perpetuate some of the most heinous crimes in the history of the human race. In the world of Nazi Germany, non-professional prostitutes were called persons with varied sexual relationships. Protective custody was the very opposite of protective. Winter relief was a compulsory tax presented as a voluntary charity, and a straightening of the front was a retreat, while serious difficulties became bottlenecks. Minister of Information, the very title is Doublespeak. Joseph Goebbels spoke in all seriousness of simple pomp and the liberalization of the freedom of the press. Nazi doublespeak reached its peak when dealing with the final solution, a phrase that it is itself the ultimate in doublespeak. The noticed, the Jew XY lived here, posted on a door meant the occupant had been deported, that is, killed. When mail was returned, stamped, addressee has moved away, it meant that the person had been deported. Resettlement also meant deportation, while work camp meant concentration camp or incinerator. Action meant massacre. Special action groups were army units that conducted mass murder. Selection meant gassing, and shot while trying to escape meant deliberately killed in a concentration camp. George Orwell and Language. In his famous and now classic essay, Politics and the English Language, which was published in 1946, George Orwell wrote that the great enemy of clear language is insincerity. When there is a gap between one's real and one's declared aims, one turns as if it were instinctively to long words and exhausted idioms, like a cuttlefish squirting out ink. For Orwell, language was important for expressing and not for concealing or preventing thought. In his most biting comment, he observed that in our time, political speech and writing are largely the defense of the indefensible. Political language has to consist largely of euphemism, question begging, and sheer cloudy vagueness. Political language is designed to make lies sound truthful and murder respectable, and to give an appearance of solidity to pure wind. Orwell understood well the power of language as both a tool and a weapon. In the nightmare world of his novel 1984, Orwell depicted a society where language is one of the most important tools of the totalitarian state. Newspeak, the official state language in the world of 1984, was designed not to extend but to diminish the range of human thought, to make only correct thought possible and all other modes of thought impossible. It was, in short, a language designed to create a reality that the state wanted. Newspeak had another important function.